The information provided in this podcast is for general information purposes only and should not be considered as personal advice. Always consult with a qualified professional or expert in the relevant field for personalised advice tailored to your specific situation.
86% of the claims in an estate is brought in by a family member. Just having that nomination in super gave that client peace of mind that there'd be no fighting over it, and it just goes to the nominated beneficiaries. Kids could have had it in 10 years, the grandkids, but she chose for them to have it when they were age 24. She just wanted to make sure when they're 24, because you can nominate and the beneficiary, the grandkids, would get it tax-free.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Wealth Guide, sponsored by Ryker Capital.
Anytime I see a client, I certainly recommend them to go see a lawyer and get a appropriate will and a power of attorney made up, because it is important. As financial planners, we don't do that. However, there are things that we can do, and we work with lawyers and solicitors on that.
Really, that important thing is really the need for having a really great lawyer and a really great financial advisor to really have a comprehensive estate planning strategy and plan in place. My name is Tamara, and I am the practice manager. Today on the couch with me, I have senior advisor Ricky Regmi.
Hey, Tamara.
Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining me today. Today, what we're going to talk about is estate planning. We're going to look at, really want to cover the areas of what do financial advisors do with regards to estate planning relative to, of course, what do lawyers do with regards to estate planning, just so people understand kind of that mix of professions and how they both need to be in the mix to really get the best outcome. So definitely want to kind of tackle that a little bit today, Ricky. So I think what I might do, let's just launch into that case study that we discussed. Mm-hmm. And I think that's probably the best way to go about this. So the one we were talking about is we had a client who her husband passed away relatively recently. And of course, she's inherited all of his assets. And I think a lot of the money was through the superannuation account. She likewise really wanted to make sure that she was set up. So when she did pass away, that her money and estate were going to the places that she wanted it to go. So I think some of the things she spoke to you about, she has children. She wants to make sure her children are getting her assets. She also has an estranged child. So wanting to make sure that, that estranged child didn't really form part of that estate. She also had specific things that she wanted to give to her grandchildren. I think it was around $50,000 each to go directly to the grandchildren and not go through children to grandchildren. Mm-hmm. So that was a bit of a wish list and very top of mind concern for the client. How did you tackle that, and what did you do relative to a lawyer? Exactly,
Tamara, that was a quite an interesting situation, and there's a lot of emotions involved as well.
I bet.
And anytime I see a client, I certainly recommend them to go see a lawyer mm-hmm. and get an appropriate will and a power of attorney made up, because it is important. As financial planners, we don't do that. However, there are things that we can do, and we work with lawyers and solicitors on that. So for this client, as you rightly mentioned, she had received her husband's super, and then now she's wanting to make sure that the remaining estate after she goes is divided in a way that she wants it to be done.
Divided, yeah.
So what we were able to do, the first thing first, I said to the client to get a new will done now that the husband's gone, to just make sure everything's correct, everything's appropriate the way she wants it to be done. And the next part, what we were able to do was, within her super, within the pension that she received from her husband mm-hmm. and the superannuation pension that she already has, we put in a binding, non-lapsing nomination.
Wow, okay. Can you unpack that with me? What does that mean? It's a lot of words.
So let's go through that. And it is quite important that people understand. A binding, as the name suggests, it is binding to the super fund mm-hmm. to ensure that whoever she's nominated is the person that gets the money.
So it's
binding on the trustee of the super fund.
Yep.
Non-lapsing. Generally what happens is the nomination in the super fund expires every 2 to 3 years. And the trustee, well, some do, some don't. However, this one, that because it was a specific need for her, we were able to put in a non-lapsing nomination, which meant that even if her health was to go bad and she's not of the right mind to make decision, her nomination doesn't need to be renewed.
Right.
And it is in place because that's how she wants it to be done. It can be changed by the client at any time. However, it does not expire.
Good.
So it's binding,
Non-lapsing.
and it's non-lapsing.
So that suited the client's
It
needs and
suited
her
the
age.
client needs
Yep.
because then she wanted to ensure her super fund goes to her 2 children. She didn't want to give money to her estranged daughter. And that's up to the client. So what it did was, because super sits outside of will, the proceeds of super do not get mixed with will
In the
or the
estate,
estate.
in the will.
In the
Yes.
state.
Okay, yeah.
So
You have to be very clear about what you want that super to do because it's not thrown in with the estate.
you can get it mixed if you wanted to.
Oh, okay.
However, you can also nominate someone
Right.
to have your proceeds. And what it means is, upon client's passing, that money would go straight to the nominated beneficiaries.
Okay. So
Without having to go through probate or going through estate and, all that. So because there's interesting data that I've got too from core data. They did
I know we were looking at those stats together.
there was some interesting stats because they did some numbers in 2020 and they came out with some of the numbers which says 86% of the claims
Yeah.
in an estate
Yes.
is brought in by a family member.
Right. That kind of makes sense.
So it's always someone who's upset that they didn't get the right share.
Yeah.
And, we've got systems to do that. And if it goes to court, they were saying any court case could take generally more than 12 months. So it's just having that nomination super gave that client peace of mind that there'd be no fighting over it.
Yeah.
And
There's
it just
clarity.
goes straight to the nominated beneficiaries.
Okay, that makes sense. So that's for her children. So that's how she wanted to handle the children's inheritance. How about the
Grandchildren. That was also interesting because she had 2 grandkids and she wanted to leave 100,000, 50,000 each.
Yeah, and not have it go to the parents to divvy it out to the kids. She wanted to make sure the kids got it.
Got it directly.
Okay, so
Absolutely.
how did you do that?
So there are also different products available. What we did for her was an investment bond, which allows the client to then pass that money on to the specific beneficiary.
Okay.
And it sits there internally. It's internally taxed, doesn't affect the client, doesn't affect the kids. And it's there to be... it's got to be, they need to hold it for 10 years because it's going for the kids and for their education or their well-being later on. So it was appropriate. We put it into investment bond where it sat there, didn't affect client's tax situation, didn't affect the kids.
And the time frame was right.
And the time frame was right. And also, kids could have had it in 10 years, the grandkids, but she chose for them to have it when they were age 24.
Smart Nana.
She just wanted to make sure she didn't want to give them.
They had the
maturity level too, and so they don't just blow up the money. So she wanted to make sure that when they're 24, because you can nominate, and the beneficiary, the kids, the grandkids would get it tax free.
So really, that's, first of all, that was a tax-effective solution because it's not adding to the tax burden of anybody because it's taxed internally.
Especially minors, if they're earning a amount of money, that's a significant amount of tax placed on them.
So structures are important consideration.
Yeah.
And then also too, and I think to your point earlier, and we did discuss it on another podcast, to really optimize the tax efficiency, you want to leave the money in there for 10 years. And that also happened to suit the timing because the kids were young enough, it would be left there really for 10 years
Exactly.
at least. Okay.
They would have, if they can access in 10 years, they'd be like 16, 17. So they can have the money, but then you can also choose what age you want to give it to them.
Yeah, so you've got you can put some caveats around there. Okay, so that kind of thing sits in an advisor's realm because you're the one that talks about superannuation nominations. That's what an advisor does. And same with the bonds and investing. So that is the advisor's role in this.
Yep.
And then to your point, absolutely making sure that the client has an up-to-date will. So when somebody passes away, it's time to change the will.
Yeah, just making sure it's looked at, it's appropriate, it's still current to situation.
Yeah.
and a lawyer would be able to give you a better reason for it if it needs to be changed or if it needs to be kept the same. Excellent.
I think you've given us a lot more clarity on really that important thing is really the need for having a really great lawyer and a really great financial advisor to really have a comprehensive estate planning strategy and plan in place.
Thanks, Samara.
Thank you, Ricky.